I'm finally checking out the Motion EasyGo Race. Had a lot of requests for this bike because it's relatively affordable, super lightweight, and it just looks beautiful. So this thing's like $12.99, so about 1,300 bucks. Available in one size, so we're looking at it. It's medium. It does come in kind of this two color tones, this sort of a satin black or maybe a really dark gray with these red highlights. Really nice looking aluminum alloy frame, high tensile steel fork. The whole thing weighs about 35 pounds. I was weighing it earlier. The battery pack on its own is just about, 2.9, so 3 pounds. It's light, Though I must say, a lot of that weight is positioned towards the rear of the bike. You got the battery, it's fairly high versus down low and centered, and the motor also towards the rear. And, at this weight level, maybe it's not a huge deal. I do like that the cables are run through the frame, and they've got these little rubber grommets that kind of try to keep even more water from getting into the frame. You can see the motor power cable protruding there from the left chainstay. I've got to say that the motor is beautiful. It's matched to the spokes. It's black and everything. This is a Dapu 250 watt nominal internally geared hub motor, so super lightweight. You do hear a little bit of a whirring sound because it's internally geared, but I think it's a good trade-off. It feels pretty peppy at the lower speeds, though it's not as nice as some of the newer Easy Motion hub motors. They've started to run this power cable sort of in closer near the axle, near the frame, instead of protruding from the end. See how this is kind of exposed? It could get maybe bent or snagged a little bit more easily. So that's one area that's a little bit cheaper on this. I think they saved weight and cost by not including a kickstand, and that's probably the style of these city bikes. A lot of them don't have kickstands. But for an electric bike with the wires and stuff, it'd kind of be nice. So there is a mounting point right there, sort of just behind the bottom bracket. You can get an aftermarket kickstand and install it. I'm just kind of leaning it up against the fence of this beautiful house. I'm, in California, it's great weather, and this is convenient. But if you're somewhere where you're parking it outside and it's snowy and wet and stuff and you're out of rack, it's nice to have an easier way to stand this up. Though at this price point and given the type of riding you might do, it's a tough frame. It might get banged up a little bit, but it's pretty snug, and this is a single speed drivetrain, so you're not going to have to worry about a derailleur going out of tune, that kind of thing. It's relatively clean, quiet, not going to drop the chain or anything. It is geared a little bit higher. There are a few more teeth on this front ring. The pedals are a little bit generic, VP plastic. They're not super rigid. They don't offer a ton of grip. I'd probably replace those as well goes. You can get some cool magnesium colorized ones. It would have been cool to have like some red, maybe pedals for this one. I also think it would have been great to have a bottle cage mounting point on the seat tube, because it's completely clear right here, and so is the down tube. There's no battery in this. That's just the frame. The power cable from the battery actually runs through the seat tube, and kind of see it right there behind the little medium stamp. I just feel like maybe that's why they didn't put bottle cage adapter here, because it's like, oh, there's a cable in there, we don't want to touch it. But why not here? It doesn't make sense to me, and you could use that for having a folding lock, a mini pump, just a water bottle cage. I think that would have been good. By the way, the medium frame, I think this is about 20 inches for that seat tube, so it is a little bit larger, and the ride position is fairly aggressive. You lean forward. This is a very, very subtle low rise bar. I call this a little bit more of an aggressive ride, just the way that it's set up. Coming back to accessorizing, there's no bosses on the seat stays either. So down here you've got a couple of mounting points, but I don't know of any racks that just mount in two places like this. They usually have some other mounting point up higher, and that's not included here. So there is another EasyGo bike that has like a suspension fork. That's going to smooth the ride out a lot more. It's not quite as aggressive as this. It does have a rack, a lot more utilitarian. Probably be my choice, but this one, it's just super minimal, super cheap, and it gets the job done. It is fun. It is pretty zippy, though I must say, I rode this thing. I've actually been riding all around the neighborhood and just trying to get a feel for it. It is a little bit jarring, just with that stiffer frame. The tires are also fairly narrow, 700 by 28C. They've got this cool deep dish rim. Again, like nice looking. And by the way, 13 gauge spokes in the rear, 14 in the front. So they're a little bit burlier. It's done well. This is made by BH. They've been making bikes since like 1909. It's like 100 years. It's just sort of a cheaper version. right? And it's also just, you know, I'm just not that tough, right? Like you go over stuff and you're like, and you're leaning forward. That's not really my favorite type of riding. And I thought like, oh, maybe you could replace the seat post with like a thud buster, but I don't think you can because the wires run through this. And actually this is very, very short. It's like 140 millimeters versus like 350 on a lot of other bikes, 31.6 diameter there. So coming back to the battery pack, you can remove it, and in fact you kind of have to. So you press down on this blue button and slide it off. See, there's no lock or anything. There's really no security. Now that we're down here, you can see the wire running in down through the seat post. So again, suspension post might not work. The battery, you know, being about 3 pounds, it's kind of cool because you could get an extra one if you wanted, if you were worried about capacity. It is a relatively small pack. I think it's about 200 amp hours, so 36 volt, 5.8 amp hours, so 208 watt hours. So, you know, an average size battery pack, in my opinion, is like 350 watt hours. So this is definitely smaller, but this is a pedal assist only electric bike, and it uses this TMM4 torque sensor back here. There's no throttle or anything. You have to pedal, and in fact, you have to push. So a lot of other electric bikes will have like a little kind of a circular plastic disc with magnets, and it's like on off. Like, are you pedaling? Yes. Power. Are you not pedaling? Okay, off. This one, it's like a strain gauge. You actually have to be pushing, and given that you only have one gear and that it's kind of a higher speed gear, that isn't fun for me because I kind of have sensitive knees. So this is a very active bike. Again, body position, pretty aggressive. You have to push. And one of the disappointing things about it is that the power really drops off after about, 15, 16 miles per hour. And I think even their official specs say like 25 kilometers per hour, which is the European limit. In the US, I'm used to hitting at least 20, and now they have Speed Pedal X. This is called like the race, right? EasyGo Race, and it's slow. Yeah, I can hit 20 miles per hour and you can still hear the motor whirring, but you're really not getting a whole lot of power. And that's in the highest level of assist. So a little bit disappointed with that. The brakes, they're fairly standard. They're like dual pivot caliper style brakes, front and rear. They're not disc brakes or anything. Again, just city style stuff, just kind of basic. Let's see, I think we've hit a lot of this stuff. Grips, they're non-locking, they're just rubberized. Oversized levers with a little bit of a plastic front and these little bumps. It kind of feels interesting, and they got the big ball at the end. So it's nice to have a longer lever like this because you do have to pull harder for this type of brake to really stop you. Again, you're not going to be going super fast unless it's on your own power. They do have motor inhibitors, which is important when you have a pedal assist, though this is torque sensing, and that tends to be very responsive on its own. Okay, so a lot of little, back and forth. The saddle, pretty firm. It's a pretty firm saddle. It kind of looks cool with like these metallic buttons and stuff, but you're not going to get a whole lot of comfort there either. That might be a good way to improve the comfort, is actually swap the saddle out with something a little bit bigger, more plush. Yeah. So, again, I'm kind of like breaking this bike down a little bit. It's probably perfect for some people. For me, it's just not super comfortable. And again, high step only frame. So if you're someone who's a little bit shorter, just getting on this thing could be a little bit of a chore. I'm gonna come down here and look at the kind of the dropouts again. This is special for the TMM4 torque sensor, and it looks like it slides in from the back. It does have the quick disconnect over there again for maintenance, which is nice, but there's no quick releases on the front wheel or on the seat post there. And again, you really can't pull the seat post out, I think, unless you take the cabling out or anything. I pulled on it and it sort of stops because it's all bound up. So let's talk about how this thing works. Just like the battery, the display is also removable, and I really like these displays from Easy Motion. They even come with like a little pouch. See this little fabric thing, so you can slip it in your pocket without getting it all scratched up. That's the charger, by the way. This weighs like 1.5 pounds, and it's a 2-amp charger. It's got the energy bus standard. It's one of the things I really like about this battery is that it's using the Rosenberger kind of configuration right here, which is just neat. I'm gonna pull this off one more time for you. So like there it is right there. That basically allows them to charge the battery, but also do diagnostics. So kind of hook it up like a computer and get more feedback. So very cool. Clips right in, feels very snug. There's even an LED like power indicator, so you can tell how full the battery is even when it's not on the bike. Remind yourself to charge it or not. So coming back to the display, go ahead and pop it back on. To get the bike going, you only need to do one thing, and it's hold down that center button, but you need to hold it down for a little while. It takes a few seconds, and that kind of goes through like a quick intro. You can hold the minus button down for a couple seconds, and backlighting comes on, which is actually really nice, especially if it's a little bit dark out. Could be a little distracting if you're riding, so I'd turn it on, turn it off as necessary. You've got your speed, you've got a whole bunch of like range and different thing options. Down here you've got battery level with 5 bars and percentage, so it's actually pretty precise. And then you've got pedal assist levels, and it goes from 100% at the high end down to 70, down to 50, down to 30, and then 0. 0, this thing's gonna act just like a cycle computer, but there's nothing else. There's no lights or anything running off the battery. That's one area where I feel Easy Motion could really improve this bike. It's like, you've got a little battery right here. It's in the perfect position. Just put some LEDs back there, some red LEDs. It would take like 0 energy, and it would make this a lot safer. Because where else are you gonna mount a light on the back? Like down here, now it's kind of covered up. I mean, you can put sometimes on the seat stays and stuff, but there's no way to add a rack to this. Even a beam rack, might collide with that battery. Like it's just like, you know, put some lights on it for safety. And also, these tires are really generic. I feel like, you know, the sidewalls, maybe even making like a reflective stripe or something, just so that this has a better visual footprint, because the black one is kind of dark, and I think that could be an issue. Okay, so coming back here, I mentioned like all this like range stuff. So basically, you have total and trip, and you can cycle through those using that center button again. So I have like total distance, odometer essentially, and then total time ridden, and then like for total max speed, like what's the fastest this bike has ever gone, and then trip, so trip distance, trip time, trip max speed, and then there's this extra sort of like range thing where you're actually telling it like, here's how far I want to ride, almost like a workout, like I want to go 20 miles, and it counts down. Interesting. I don't know if I would use that. You can also go into the settings by holding like plus and minus together for a couple seconds. You can tell it the wheel size. So again, these are 28-inch wheels. So 28. Let's cycle to the next thing. We can change from miles to kilometers. It's unit. You can say, is this a snow bike? Because Easy Motion has like these, you know, 2 motor systems on like their Evo Snow. This isn't a snow bike, so we don't want it to think it is. So I'm gonna go next. And then the battery. And this battery was set up, like the display thought it was bigger, and so I had to dial it down to 5.8. I don't know what that does, but it made me feel good getting it right. And that's it. When you're done with that, you just hold that center button again for a couple seconds, and it goes back to the main display. If you want to change any of those settings, by the way, you just hit up or down when you're in there. So there we go. We've looked at all kinds of stuff on this bike. I really wanted to be thorough because a lot of people are curious about this bike. I think it's easy to get excited about, but it's a cheaper bike, and it's not super upgradable, as we've kind of seen, except for the battery pack. I love that you could buy another one of those for several $100s. I'm not really sure how much your dealer would sell it for, but it's £3, so you could have one of those in your backpack, have one of those on your bike, you know, extend your range. I think in the highest level of assist, this will get like 10 plus miles for someone who's a little heavier or whatever, because it is putting out like 3x your energy pedaling. Similar to kind of like a throttle or something like that. You're still gonna get better range because it's pedal assist all the time. At the very high end, Easy Motion says 28 miles. At the lowest level of assist, I could see that. Again, you know, it's meant for riding around the city. You get an awesome 2-year warranty. If you register it, they give you 5 years. That doesn't include the battery, but it, you know, the motor and some of the other stuff is included. So it's a pretty cool, like minimal electric bike. And I think it's pretty stylish. So let's get on this thing and finally go for a ride and see how it does. Okay, so I'm in the highest level of assist, so you can hear the motor. I'm just coasting very slowly. I'm gonna go ahead and push down, try to accelerate and listen for that motor. It kind of, if you heard the kind of the whirring fade out, I was at around 17 miles per hour when that happened. So that's what I'm talking about, that, you know, at the lower end, it's like, yeah, okay, cool, it's helping me, I'm going, I can feel it. And then when you get to that higher level, or higher speed, I should say, it just kind of cuts off. It's not quite as, I guess it's really not super noticeable, and you really have to pedal, you know, pretty actively to get to that 20 miles per hour. You know, I've been riding around and just listening for pedal assist and how quickly it jumps in and jumps out. I wasn't activating the brakes much there, and you could hear that there was a delay. There's a little bit of a delay. I've also noticed that sometimes with these TMM4 torque sensors, if the chain is bouncing a lot, that can kind of activate pedal assist at times when you really didn't want it to happen, because, you know, that bounce is creating a little bit of extra tension and straining that gauge. So for something like this that's on road, it's not maybe going to happen as much, especially because there's only one speed. But it's worth noting. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of a delay. It kind of fades out instead of stopping right when you stop. And that might help to smooth out the ride a little bit. I don't know. Also, if you're sort of at rest on this bike and you're just pushing down on the pedal, it might start to go. You know, so using those brake levers to keep the motor under control is a good idea. Very cool, very cool. I've been excited about this bike for a while. It's awesome to get out and, you know, really ride it for a while and see how it performs, learn all the little kind of intricacies. For the full write-up on this and other more affordable, more minimal electric bikes, I'll see you back at electricbikereview.com. And of course, ride safe.